Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to cover some very uncomfortable issues, especially for men. What happens when you're exposed to very sudden, out of the blue aggressive violence? Most of the time, most people are caught like a deer in the headlights. It's what happens because your mind has to get around the fact that this is going on right now. This is happening. And once that's settled, and only once that's settled, does the fight or flight mechanism kick in. That's normal for everybody. Let me give you an example of this that's very unflattering from my youth. Now, I grew up to be very aggressive as a kid in sports and as a young man. I was a soccer goalie, and I made it to fifth at the Nationals with my team based on pure aggression. There were plenty of goalies across the country that had the world's more talent than me. What happened to me in my early 20s, I met this girl. I took her to a club. A band was playing. I thought I was really going to impress her. And bear with the story for a minute. The band is playing, the music's loud. There are two people in front of us. They're a few feet ahead of us, and in front of them is another couple. And I can see them very, very clearly. And I'm having a good time. And I think the girl is suitably impressed. And then it happened. The woman, the girl, two couples in front of me, all of a sudden turned to the man and yelled something. And I thought it was because the music was loud. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he gets her. And this is like a boxing knockout punch. Sudden violence. Bang. He spins her around. She comes back up again. And that's that. And I sat there shocked. Did I just see that? Now, granted, I'd had a couple of drinks, but did I just see what I think I saw? And I looked at the girl beside me and I said, did he just hit her? And well, she couldn't see it from where she was standing. And then I'm trying to figure this out. If he'd hit her again, I'd have jumped on him because then I would have known I could come to grips with the situation mentally. And then all of a sudden, the big 6'7" bouncer blew right past us, grabbed the kid, picked him up like a teddy bear, and hauled him out of there. So, yes, it had happened. And I was caught like a deer in the headlights. Sudden, unexpected violence. And I couldn't get my head around it. And all this happened in less than 15 seconds. The bouncer saw it. The bouncer reacted. It was over. And from then till now, I've thought about it quite often because I was a soccer goalie and always enjoyed contact. I like contact sports. It wasn't fear. I couldn't get my head around it. That situation is playing out for you regarding Ukraine right now. A week ago or so, 11 LNR soldiers were laid down on the ground after they surrendered, and then they were executed. This is a war crime. And it was Ukrainians that put that video up. Now, they show a man dressed in black coming out with a weapon and firing, but you notice the camera guy doesn't flinch. LNR soldiers don't wear black. Ukrainian cleansers do, especially Azov. That's the reality. So we see this, and the world is wondering, is this a war crime or were the Ukrainians defending themselves? Breaking it down, all these men were shot in the back of the head, execution style. If the machine gunner who was laying down on the Ukrainian side had fired at him, he would have torn up some of their bodies. Some of them would have survived. Some of them would have been unscathed. This came from directly behind them and above them. They were shot. Secondly, if the Ukrainians were firing back at this man in black, they would have been aiming away from the men on the ground. So we know this happened. But media is saying, was this self-defense or was this a war crime? And now you're in the headlights. having your 15 seconds. Because if it is a war crime, how are you going to react to it? Well, you ask me, why is it my problem? Your problem stems from the fact that in this case, as in many others, in Ukraine right now and since 2014, Americans have been there committing the atrocities alongside the Ukrainians. This guy is coming home and he's getting a taste for blood, this kind of blood. The other side of this is that, according to the FBI reports, a lot of these people just came from Syria. They were fighting with the Kurds, which is where Antifa members were fighting. And so you have Antifa and these neo-Nazis coming together now. What they've learned is that their politics aren't actually that different. And if that doesn't scare you, well, wait till the next set of riots start, because these people have gotten a taste for this. There's one character with Azov, an American named Kent McClellan. They call him Boneface. He was a little upset because of the 2014 video where Azov botched the crucifixion and ended up lighting the guy on fire of an honest soldier. He was there, and of course, he was the guy without a mask on. With the tattoos on his face, he's fairly recognizable. Yeah. In Bucha, the head of the foreign part of Azov had his base, and that was the guy they called Botsman. Now you have this guy on video being asked, should I shoot this guy? He has a white armband on. Yeah, go ahead. And there's another 15 seconds. What are you going to do? So we have somebody asking somebody if they can commit a war crime. And are we good with it? Yeah, we blame the Russians, right? And all those people, all those photos in Bucha showing all those people with Russian humanitarian packages shot down. Your 15 seconds. Do people giving people humanitarian aid turn around and shoot them? And then leave the packages. Here's the proof. 15 seconds. This has been happening since 2014. This isn't anything new, but not only now it's stepped up. Now we're in Kherson, over 200 people missing. There's videos, a woman on video telling the Ukrainian soldier that this man is a collaborator. He has Russian rubles, Russian money. So they grab him on video and they ask him, do you have Russian money? He said, yes, I have a job. They pay me in Russian rubles. He's a collaborator. And another man was thrown off a 7th floor balcony for being a collaborator because he had a Russian passport. Now, what do all the people in Kherson have in common? When the Russians left, they stayed. But a few months ago, Ukraine made a law saying if the army was forced out of an area and you stayed, you were an enemy of the state and you would be treated like one. Well, now the Ukrainians came back in, and guess what? They're rounding up all the men, military age, that stayed, and they're throwing them up on the front line. Oh, you want to be Russians? Go see the Russians. And there's no training, there's no nothing. They're throwing them up there. For what reason? To be killed. The nationalists behind them so they can't retreat, and the nationalists ready to shoot them if they try to surrender or escape. 15 seconds. You have 15 seconds. How many times do you need your 15 seconds? You see, with mine, I woke up the next day after that club, and I couldn't look in the mirror. And at first I couldn't figure out why. Why didn't I react? Why didn't that register? See, it wasn't because I was afraid. I wasn't. I loved contact. ate up contact sports. I couldn't get my head around it at first. It was so out of place in that setting right then, right there, when I was having such a good time, that I would rather believe that what I was seeing was false, was not fake, but I'm imagining it somehow, than the actual reality of another human being brutalized in front of my eyes. Mentally, it just didn't click. That was the last time it didn't click. The only time it didn't click. For you right now, this needs to click because these people are learning these trades, military trades, and bringing them home. And then they're rejoining their groups and they support Biden's agenda. They support destroying conservatives and Republicans because they are the only group standing against all these big globalism changes. The Great Reset, they're loving this. It brings about the world they actually want on both the neo-Nazis and Antifa. Your 15 seconds passed, and it's time to make a decision about this. Because, as Ben Franklin said, it's not something, nothing is important until it affects you. It is affecting you. And so it's up to you to decide what's important. It's up to you to decide whether or not your way of life is important to preserve for your children and their children, or just yourself right now. Do you want a future? These people need to be stopped from going over to Ukraine to begin with. And the immigration of Ukrainian nationalists to America needs to stop. The FBI got caught onto it and was smart about it in 2020. They stopped Ukrainian immigration altogether. Why? It was the Ukrainian nationalist terrorists, members of Azov. And at the time, the FBI stated openly they were committing terrorist acts on American soil. Not that they could, that they were. This is real. It's time to not be the deer in the headlights anymore. Now, they've been doing this over and over and over again to everybody and across the world. COVID, deer in the headlights. Is this happening? Is it real? What's real? What's not? What's going on? Do we even know today? Is there an official accounting for this? No. Good researchers, virologists, doctors, going against the grain, stood up and said, we're not deer in the headlights anymore. And this is violence against us. What Biden's done to the economy is violence against us. All these things add up over and over and over again to what they're forcing on America and the world. These elections that are happening and are going to happen in 2024 are some of the most important that have happened since the republic became a republic, because it's going to decide its future. Will you be ruled by extra legal means? Do you want political militant groups bullying you, beating you up, and killing you? Is this acceptable? If it's not acceptable for you there, you've got to stop it in Ukraine, because it's coming back to you from here. I'm George Elias, and